Hello everyone, and welcome to the Reddit Railway. My name is Victor, and I'll be your driver. Today's destination is r/relationships, so all aboard! I'm a bisexual guy, and my friend Steve, whom I've known for 10 years, is gay. We come from conservative families, so we didn't even know the concept of queerness when we were young. Steve and I were inseparable throughout our teenage years, and people joked that we were like brothers. We managed to get into the same college and moved to a big city when we were 17 years old. This exposed us to a completely different world, and Steve realized that he was gay. I realized that I too was attracted to men. Not knowing anything about the queer stuff, I thought I was gay too. Steve and I found other queer people, and our new friend circle was made up of gay people. We couldn't tell our families that we were queer, so Steve and I could only depend on each other. We started dating men, but our initial relationships weren't very serious. After my first gay relationship ended, I realized that I was attracted to both men and women. I was bisexual. I told this to my group of queer friends, who said that I was going through a phase, that years of brainwashing was the reason I was attracted to women, that I would get over it, and they told me that I was gay. Steve refused to accept that I was bisexual and told me that bisexuality wasn't real. I tried to convince him, but he refused to accept that I wasn't gay. We were roommates, and this started causing a lot of tension between us. I decided to let it go and stop trying to convince him. Things went back to normal, and I had 2 more gay relationships. Then I met my current girlfriend, Mary, at a bar. Mary and I hit it off immediately. We exchanged numbers and kept talking for a week before I invited her to our flat. I introduced her to Steve, and Mary and I went into my room. When she was leaving, I noticed that Steve was glaring at her. I didn't think much about this. Mary and I started meeting more often, and Steve refused to talk to her. I decided to ask him about it, and he told me that Mary was not good for me and asked me why I was being so close to a woman. I asked him what he meant by that, and he just stormed off. Steve started fighting me about trivial things that didn't matter before. Mary and I made our relationship official a few weeks later, and I posted about it on my story. When I got back to our flat, Steve and a few friends were waiting for me. Steve started shouting at me, asking how I could betray him. He told me that I turned my back on him, and he called Mary a witch. I reminded him that I was bisexual and assured him that I wasn't leaving him. Our friends took Steve's side and asked me why I started dating a woman. They agreed with Steve that Mary bewitched me. I left our flat, and when I came back later, Steve refused to talk to me and told me that he wouldn't talk to me as long as I was in a relationship with Mary. I hoped that this would blow over, but Steve refuses to talk to me a month later. I really like Mary, and I don't want to end our relationship, but Steve needs my support, and nobody back home knows anything about us being queer. We would most probably be disowned if they found out. How do I handle this situation? Easy. Ditch Steve and your quote-unquote friends. My alarm bell started ringing the moment they said you being bisexual was a phase. That's complete rubbish. And bisexuality isn't real? What the fuck is wrong with these people? OP, if they can't support you, then they're not your friends. Get rid of them for your own sake. There is an update, so we'll see if that's what happened. After I posted on Reddit, I decided to tell Mary about Steve not talking to me. She was extremely supportive and told me that she'd support me in anything I decide to do. Some people asked if Mary knew about my gay relationships. I told her about my earlier relationships and me being bisexual in our first date, and she was okay with it. I did not know biphobia was a thing until the comments told me about it yesterday. I assumed that everyone in the LGBT community supported each other, and I thought I was doing something wrong. As many people suggested, I decided to cut off my toxic friends circle, and I won't be talking to them in the future. A comment about the relationship between Steve and I being codependent made me rethink our friendship. I realized that we were depending on each other too much. We were the only connection to home left for each other, and this made us way too dependent on each other. I felt like we needed space from each other. I decided to move out, and when I told Steve about this, he started crying and begged me not to leave. He said he would talk to me and that he would tolerate Mary. I told him that we were being codependent, and he wouldn't need to tolerate me if he didn't like my choices. I told him that I would be there for him when he decides to come out, and that he could always count on my support. Steve kept crying, but I told him my decision was final. I went back to my room, called Mary, and started crying. She listened to what I had to say and reassured me. I had to look for a new place to live, but Mary called me a few hours later and told me that one of her friends has a room and that I could move in with him. I thanked her for her help. Steve's friends started calling and yelling at me for abandoning them for a girl. They accused me of being a bad friend and accused Mary of breaking up our friendship. When I called Mary later, she told me that my friends were calling her and shouting at her for breaking up my my friendships. I apologize, but she was very understanding and told me that she would be there for me if I needed her. Hearing her say that made me feel better. I'm moving out, putting some distance between Steve and I, and blocking my earlier friends. This ordeal has made me understand that I made the right decision by sticking with Mary, and I appreciate her way more now. Lots of you mentioned that Steve might have feelings for me. I've only ever thought of him as a friend, and I might have given it a shot before, but now I'm afraid of a romantic relationship with him. Thank you to all the people who gave me advice and helped me decide. Great. OP ditched those nongs. I have to admit, I'd never heard the word biphobia before reading this story, but I guess it makes sense. Being gay doesn't mean you're tolerant of everything and everyone. This story is proof of that. I'm glad you were able to get out of there, OP, and Mary sounds like a keeper. You hold on to her for as long as you can. Best of luck, mate. Anyway, we've come to the end of our journey. Thank you for traveling on the Reddit Railway, and we hope to see you again soon.